Check this out. This is RFK Jr. off the record, according to him. This is off the record, and he's appalled that somebody would take something he said off the record and tell everybody. He's saying that he believes that COVID-19 is specifically designed so that Jews are not hurt by it, basically, is what he says here. This is released by the New York Post, July 16th, 2023.
And we need to talk about bioweapons. I know a lot now about bioweapons because I've been doing a book on it for the past 2.5 years. And
he knows these things about bioweapons because he's been doing a book about it. Okay. Well, there's a difference between a scientist studying these subjects and a political activist writing a book about these subjects. But okay, go on.
And you know, the technology that we now have to develop these microbes, we've put hundreds of millions of dollars into ethnically targeted microbes.
I do not believe that for a second. If you didn't hear him, basically what he said was that the United States and China and basically every other government out there has put hundreds of millions of dollars into ethnically targeted microbes, I think he said. I'm sorry, I don't believe that for a second. There are actual laws, international laws against that kind of thing, the Geneva Conventions. And if a single whistleblower, a single guy came out and blew the lid off of it, literally every single country in the world would lose their shit if they found out that that was happening. And here's another little fun fact for you if you were unaware. You can't hide things from massive amounts of people. It doesn't work that way. This is part of the reason why the flat earth is such a ridiculous conspiracy theory, because you know how many people would have to be behind the conspiracy lying about it all? You'd have to have globe manufacturers and telescope manufacturers and airline pilots and like everybody in on this massive conspiracy. Something you learn in the industry when you start, studying these conspiracy nutcases is that any link in the chain, any single link in the chain it could be a weak link. It takes one guy to blow the lid off of everything. And that's exactly what we've seen time and time again. The United States tried to hide their torture program for years and didn't. They failed because one guy came out and blew the lid off of it. They tried to hide the fact that they were, I'm talking about the U.S. government here. The U.S. government tried to hide the fact that they were collecting data on everybody, like across the entire world, against they were violating their constitutional rights, their Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable search and seizure, to collect data about everything and everybody. One guy blew the lid off. It takes one person, one weak link in the chain of, secrecy is all it takes. Suddenly everybody knows, basically. Everybody is fully aware. So the point is, the conspiracy theories that he's espousing here, that the U.S. and China and whoever else are working on these weapons that are like ethnically targeted, it's ridiculous at its face. No, they're not. If they were, the world would come down on them like a ton of bricks. China would be the new most sanctioned country in the world if that were to happen. Nobody would work with China if they knew that they were ethnically targeting bioweapons or something like that. Making bioweapons at all is against the Geneva Conventions. These are things that everybody is signed on to. Everyone. Just about every country that exists has signed on to some form of the Geneva Conventions. If you don't know how the Geneva Conventions work, there's a baseline. So the bottom line is you will not attack civilians. You will not attack press. You will not attack medics. And you won't use bioweapons. You won't use nukes. Every country that's legitimized has to sign at least the bottom line, right? At least the bottom one. Now, there are other things that people can sign and say, like if you sign the Geneva Convention 5 instead of 4 or 3 or whatever, then that means you agree not to torture prisoners of war, and you expect other parties not to torture your people as prisoners of war either. So it's like it's rules of war that people can sign on to. You can agree to do this or that, and if you agree to do this or that, then these other countries will also agree, so on and so forth. So the United States has agreed to the highest level. Or no, there's one level above it, and India signed on to the highest level. And then the U.S. signed on to the one right below that. I believe, I could be wrong, so don't quote me on this. You can probably find out in the Wikipedia article. The very bottom, the first one you sign on to as a country, basically says no bioweapons. No, it's certainly not ethnically targeted bioweapons. So literally every single country has agreed not to do what he's describing or what he's claiming that China and the U.S. and everybody else is doing. And spending hundreds of millions of dollars, not really, hundreds of millions. Do you have any idea how little that is compared to like what this type of research would require? No, this is nonsense. I'm sorry. This is conspiracy theory all the way down. But okay, I mean, we're 23 seconds into his clip here, and he's already completely full of it, right? As Robert Adset says, it's not clear you could even ethnically target a virus, certainly not one that varies even as much as COVID-19. Right. According to scientists, I believe that it's technically possible to do this ethnically targeted thing, but we are not there scientifically, not anywhere near it, first of all. And second, COVID-19 does vary, like, a lot. There's a lot of mutation in COVID-19. It's constant. There's always a mutation taking place in COVID-19, right? You know, we had the Delta variant, we had the Alpha variant, and all these other variants of COVID-19. Like, you can't pin it down to save your life. When you have all these variations, it's nearly impossible to guarantee that it's going to stay in line and only hurt the people that you wanted it to hurt, and not hurt the Chinese or the Jews, the way that he frames it here. Anyway, keep listening.
Hundreds of millions of dollars into ethnically targeted microbes.
Absurd.
The Chinese have done the same thing.
Chinese have done the same thing. So the U.S. and China are both researching, according to RFK Jr., researching ethnically targeted viruses. Just absurd at its face.
The Chinese have done the same thing. In fact, COVID-19, there's an argument that it is ethnically targeted.
So by espousing what he just espoused, he is tacitly endorsing this quote-unquote argument. What he's doing isn't like overt, it's not like obvious, but he is endorsing this belief. He is endorsing this position. He's going to pretend, he's going to hedge and pretend that that's not what he's doing, but that's what he's doing. He's endorsing this belief, this position, absolutely.
COVID-19, there's an argument that it is ethnically targeted.
No, there is not an argument by any serious human being on planet Earth that it's ethnically targeted.
COVID-19 attacks certain races disproportionately.
So he knows what he's about to say is absolutely unglued from reality, right? So he's going to, again, hedge and be very careful about what he says and when he says it, right? So he's going to start, he knows, like, what he wants to communicate is that COVID-19 targets everybody except for Jews. That's basically what he wants to say. The Jews are protected from COVID-19, which is absurd. He knows that's his starting point, so he's going to try to ease his listening audience into it by creating a victim first before announcing the perpetrator that he wants to point the finger at here. So he's going to start out by naming victims that everybody can get on board with. Listen to this.
The races that are most immune to COVID-19 are because of the structure of the genetic structure, genetic differentials.
You know, he's trying to make it sound scientific, and he was about to tell us who he thinks it's targeted toward, and then he got off on this thing to try to make it sound more scientific. Notice.
Different races of the receptors of the ACE2 receptor. COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people.
So when you hear somebody talk about the black community in America being targeted by something, that's true, that they are targeted by things all the time. The black community is constantly, by police and by others. And it's something that Republicans love to deny. This is, I'm trying to show you how this guy is building out this conspiracy theory and hedging and trying to protect himself from blowback for the conspiracy that he is building right now. So he starts out by saying black people are being disproportionately hurt by this. That's actually true statistically. According to the data, the black community is actually hurt worse by this, but it's not because of their ACE2 receptor or any of that other nonsense. It's because black communities are historically underserved and not taken, it's like basically people care less about black communities by and large. The scientific community has noted that the black communities are suffering worse from COVID as a result of all this stuff. So anyways, he's correct here, but the next thing he says is very incorrect.
The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese.
Jews and Chinese are least immune to COVID. So he just talked about victims. He just pointed out victims as a method of simmering down the heat on himself, right? And then he pointed the finger at some ethnicities and for better or worse, whether he wants to admit this or not, he implicitly claimed that China created COVID-19 in a lab with the intent to hurt people that were not Jewish, which is just an absolutely bizarre thing to say, a bizarre political position to take, nonsensical garbage, but okay.
But we don't know whether it was deliberately targeted that or not. But there are papers out there that show the racial and ethnic differential.
So he said we don't know if it's intentionally targeted. No, that's not what you were implying just now. That's not what was being implied. And that paper he referenced, there are papers out there that show the blah, 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 blah. He posted a paper on Twitter in his defense about this and said, look, see this paper here? This proves it. Now, when you pull the paper up, it doesn't prove anything. Doesn't even say what he says that it said. The guy is full of it from top to bottom. The fascinating thing about what RFK Jr. is doing here is he is actually a political activist who is in favor of climate change action and believes a bunch of stuff about, climate change deniers and stuff. Like, he believes that if people deny climate change, like the Koch brothers, if oil companies deny climate change and put money into lying about it and stuff like that, then they should be put in jail. That's serious action that he wants done against people who deny climate change. And why? Because it's getting people killed. Because it's, displacing who knows how many people climate change is. And he knows that they're just lying for the sake of lying, and he knows that they just want to make money and stuff. And there is really no good reason for them to do what they're doing right now. The climate change deniers, it's all about money for them. Why doesn't he turn that introspective eye in on himself? Why doesn't he turn that around on vaccine skepticism? You could just as easily make the arguments that he makes about climate change deniers as you could about vaccine deniers, like himself. He doesn't use the same skepticism against climate change that he does against vaccines, or vice versa. Like, it's a completely separate, compartmentalized thing in this dude's brain, seemingly. It's bizarre. I mean, this guy really believes in climate action. He's serious about it. Serious enough to send people to prison if they lie about it, intentionally and knowingly. But he's willing to go to a known terrorist group, Moms for Liberty, and talk at any one of their events about, vaccines and how evil they are. He's willing to lie and claim that Jews, or at least imply, not make the claim outright, but at least imply that Jews were the ones that created the virus. He's willing to lie about that. The guy is terrible. He's absolutely awful in every way. And his uncle, John F. Kennedy, would be disgusted at what this guy's become. I say that with a completely straight face and with complete confidence in that fact. His uncle would be absolutely disgusted at the fact that this guy is seemingly knowingly lying to hurt a minority group. Just disgusting.
Impact to that. We do know that the Chinese are spending hundreds of millions of dollars developing ethnic bioweapons, and we are developing ethnic bioweapons. That's what.
He already said that, and no, we don't know that, and that's complete nonsense. If we knew that as a country, oh my God, the shitstorm that would rain down on China if they were actually developing ethnic bioweapons. Oh boy, they would be cut out of literally everything on planet Earth if that were true.
All those labs in the Ukraine are about.
There were no biolabs in Ukraine that were, I think that they had some biolabs in Ukraine, just like they have in Russia and the U.S. and everywhere else. Biolabs are like basically a standard part of any scientific infrastructure. Yeah, everybody has biolabs. There's not, no surprise to that. But there isn't some big conspiracy about it. But he wants there to be,
They're collecting Russian DNA. They're collecting Chinese DNA. So that we can target people by race.
Absolutely absurd. So anyway, that was RFK Jr.'s whole bit about ethnically targeted, whatever. Just complete nonsense. He has no idea what he's talking about. Or even worse, maybe he does know what he's talking about and is intentionally setting out to deceive people. I don't know which it is or what's going on in the dude's head. I don't know. But one thing I can guarantee is he's actually getting people hurt by lying about it, by twisting the facts around and making everybody believe that the Chinese and the Jews are out to get him or whatever. He's creating divisions. What he's doing right now is simply disgusting.